Hey, it's Dustin. Thanks for stopping by. I've got a treat today as we review this Speedpaint Megaset 2.0 that was graciously sent to me by the Army Painter. I'm looking forward to looking into this set, but to find out what they've changed in the 2.0 version, why don't we let Bo from the Army Painter talk about it for a minute.
New formulation has all the qualities and properties of the old Speedpaint. So you can work with the colors before it's dry, but the difference is once it is dry, you can paint on top of it if you want to.
Anyone who's followed my channel knows that I received a 1.0 set from the Army Painter back when they first released it, and I instantly fell in love with them. They're great paints, they cover well, they highlight well, but there was one dirty problem that the community pointed out: reactivation. So they took in feedback from their customers, hired a new paint development team, and came up with a new formula that doesn't reactivate, or so they claim. Let's find out how it works. Inside the box you're going to get 50 bottles of paint, which includes 1 bottle of Speedpaint Medium, 3 bottles of Speedpaint Metallics, and 46 colors of Speedpaint. It's quite a bit. I do want to point out that not all the bottles have the 2.0 marking on them. From what I understand, they ordered the labels before they decided on the 2.0 moniker, and those labels just didn't get reprinted yet, but they're the new formula still. And while the paints are really cool, the best thing in the box for me, the sticker. Look at that goblin. I've been on a Blood Bowl kick lately, so I figured what better way to test these out than to prime up a Blood Bowl Ork in Zenithal style, and then hit it with a dry brush, slapchop style. I got my Ork skin speed paint out, put it on my palette, and went to work covering all the skin on this Ork. Ork skin is a color that came in the 1.0 version of Speed Paints, and I liked it then. It worked well, it covered well, and I like it just as well now. It still covers well, the highlights show through, and it's a bright, punchy color. I made sure to cover all the skin that was exposed. That includes both hands, his arms, his face, and his legs. One point is don't slop too much on, especially in small detail areas like his hand. You don't want that paint getting anywhere where you're going to put speed paint somewhere else. It'll show through the next color. Up next is one of my favorite colors I've used so far out of the box, Slaughter Red. It's just a really deep, rich red that covers in one coat. Not typically something you can say about red colored paint. I took this color and applied it to all of his armor bits, the shoulder pads, his breastplates, his knee pads, and man, one coat covers this like you wouldn't believe. It just looks great the minute you put it on the miniature and it dries. One thing I want to point out about speed paint is that most of the colors I've used dry just a little bit darker than they look like on the miniature, so keep that in mind when you're picking your colors. For the cloth bits on this, I just went back and used Gravelord Grey from the 1.0 set, as the Mega set didn't come with it. I think it was a good test to show you how the 1.0 applies compared to the 2.0, so that you can see what the difference looks like, even though it's not the same color. One of the other new colors I really like in this set is this Satchel Brown, but it is quite dark, so I take some Speed Paint Medium and I mix it about 50-50 in this instance to tone it down. I think when it's done that way, it makes a really good leather color. The shoes on this guy, some of his leather straps, they just look great when it's 50-50 with the Satchel Brown. When put on straight on the miniature though, it's exceedingly dark. I think that brings up another good tip when using speed paints, is that don't thin these with water. Pour them straight on your dry palette. Don't use water. If you need to thin them out, make sure that you're using a medium, because that's what's going to help it maintain that flow that we like from our speed paints. I wanted a brighter pop of color on my Orks, so I went with the Maize Yellow. It's a nice change from the Speedpaint 1.0 yellows, which a common criticism was that they were quite orange. I'd have to agree. Not in the case here, but I'd make sure that you put these on a white undercoat, as they're not quite as strong as some of the other colors out there. Now the thing I know a lot of you have been waiting for, the Speedpaint Metallics. They're an interesting paint set. The Broadsword Silver here has a bluish hue to it, and I don't hate it. It's quite an interesting color. This model that I'm doing doesn't have much metal on it, so I'll cut to one that does here in just a moment, but it goes on well. Single coat coverage. It is shiny. It looks like metallic, and I could see myself using them quite a lot on miniatures that I just don't want to mess with doing metals on. One of the criticisms I have of Speedpaint Metallics is they separate much faster than any paint that I've ever used. They'll separate on my palettes in between return trips to get more paint, so always make sure that you mix them up on your palette because those metallic flakes just fall out quick. I didn't have any gold on this miniature to do, so I just grabbed this random print that I had sitting by to put the gold on there so that you guys could see what that would look like. It's an amazing color as well. I've used it on quite a few other miniatures. The one thing to keep in mind with these metallics, though, at least in my experience, they don't really care what color you put under them as far as slapchop or zenithal or anything like that, as it's really not going to show through very much. Another color I really like is this Bone Matter paint. It's much better than the Pallid Bone in the Speedpaint 1.0. I use it for cloth wraps, teeth, toenails, you name it. Well, that finishes our model, and I think it looks great for a tabletop. I added a number, but we can take some of these details a little bit further, which I'll show you on one of the other orcs I did later in the video. But for now, let's see what a human looks like when painted up with some of the new Speedpaint 2.0. So I prepped a human thrower in the same way I did for the orc I did, hit it with a zenithal and then a slapchop style dry brush, and went to town with the maize yellow again. I do really like this color and how bright it is, but like I said earlier, you've got to put it over a lighter color. The undercoat here just really shows through, and it's almost too dark in some areas. You'll see it later. I've sped up the video a little bit just so that you can see how the colors go on, but not wait for me to be slow and neat. So enjoy watching this, and I'll input some things as we go on. For this team, I'm covering everything cloth and yellow, so his shirt, the belt, his little flags hanging off his belt, everything except the pants, because they'll get a different color later. The helmet gets yellow stripe as well. Once I finished up the yellow, I started with some purple swarm. The purple is quite a dark color, and so I made sure to thin it down just a little bit with some speed paint medium again. I didn't want quite that deep, punchy purple that it looked like it was going to provide. I took this color and applied it to all the armor pieces all over his body. Shoulder pad, chest plate, knee pads, all those good things that keep him safe on the pitch. As soon as I finished with the purple, I went back to the satchel brown, the same diluted version of it that I used on the orc, and did all the leather bits. One thing I don't show in this video is that I went back and eventually covered the thigh pads with it, and I didn't put it on the neatest, but I was trying to demonstrate what it might look like for someone who's just trying to get an army on the table. So to mix up some of the colors on here, I didn't just want them bright yellow and purple. I went with the aged stone on his pants. It's a nice gray color that dries somewhat dark, but I could see this being really great for things like gravel or anything like that. One color I didn't like from the 1.0 was Crusader skin. It just didn't seem to work for me. So here I'm using the new Warrior skin tone, and it's pretty dark, but I like it much better than the Crusader skin. It covers well, but I think it's another one of those colors that really need to just go over a plain, light base coat. Back to the metallics to do his face guard, the wings on his helmet, and the front of his knee pads as well. Plus, I think there's a spike on the shoulder, if I remember correctly. So I've not talked about it yet. The question on everyone's mind, do they reactivate? Well, here I'm going over some of the purple with a white base coat so that I can redo the straps on his shoulder pads, and no, they don't. And here's the completed model. He's good. I could put him on the tabletop, but I probably could have done a lot better with him. But he doesn't have any detail work, it's just speed paint. So let's talk about the performance of these speed paint while I finish up some of these other models. I've painted probably about 30 models with it since I've gotten the box, and I'm impressed. I think they're better than the 1.0 version. They perform similarly as the 1.0 version. They go on well, they cover well, they dry much faster, I'll say that. They are workable much faster than the 1.0 version. In some cases, I only waited about 30 minutes before painting over them. And you'll see on the finished model that I show at the end of the video that there's no bleed through. So to be safe, you should probably wait 2 hours to paint over them. But really, many of the colors you can get paint on them much faster than that. I added some bases to the models just to make them look better. And they were just about ready to go on the pitch. Some glistening blood, because what would Blubble be without blood? Did the black on the edges of the base to clean them up, and then they were ready to go. With just a little detail work, they go a long way. I'd say it took me about 2 hours to paint up 6 models to this standard. They're not perfect, but I'm ready to play with them. Do I think Army Painter fixed the problems with 1.0? I do. And as long as you use the paints as intended, they're going to work really well. One coat and done. You can add some details if you want to. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I hope to see you in the next video.